Wayne Williams here. We are on Long Island. Yes, you heard me correctly. We're on Long Island. We're about 50 miles east of New York City, halfway out on Long Island. Long Island is roughly 100 miles long. We are here at the farm and facility where Sonny Garguilo trains and works. And we want to show you that on Long Island there are thousands of horses. And yes, that's thousands of horses. Roughly 30,000 horses on Long Island. And that we have some great horse people and great horse places. This particular farm, it's small in acreage. It's very functional here in Long Island. But there's a 4,000 plus acre park and reserve right adjacent to it with all those horse trails through there, and you're in the middle of Long Island. It's hard to believe, but we want you to join us here on Speaking of Horses as we talk about New York and Long Island horsemen. Let's go look.
They are our family, and we only want the best for them. No standing water means clean, good tasting, algae-free, mosquito-free, and virus-free water. No risk of electric shock, no risk of fire from faulty wiring. Cool water in the summer, warm water in the winter. Water delivered fresh from the water supply at 50 degrees year-round. Drinking Post water.
Hey, Wayne Williams, speaking of horses, and we are, believe it or not, we are on Long Island. We're right in the middle of Long Island, very close to Central Islip, if you're familiar with the area. And very happy to have a guest today, Mr. Sonny Garguilo. Now, Sonny and I have worked together at many events and horse expos and the like. And I kind of jokingly refer to Sonny as my New York cowboy or New York horse person. But we're here today to show you that horsemanship, horse activities, and everything to do with horses is very alive and well on Long Island, and there are many good horses and horse people on the island, and you just don't think about that when you think about New York. You think about New York City, and you don't think about this. So, Sonny, welcome.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
Yes.
Now, you're here on Long Island. You're basically born and bred in New York.
Yes, sir.
Just to give us a brief synopsis of your journey to horses in a nutshell, and out here to Long Island and what you're doing now.
Well, I mean, as a kid, every kid, especially in the inner cities, you know, I grew up, I was born in Brooklyn, I was raised on city streets, okay. I think every kid grew up with, you know, a little bit of the Lone Ranger and Western movies, John Wayne and such. So I think we, you know, those were heroes we could look up to because they were outside of our environment. You know, they were like today, you know, kids kind of look up to these, you know, Iron Man and things like that. You know, they were so far out of our environment that it looked fun. It looked, it was interesting to us. You know, and they were heroes to us. You know, you'd see the Lone Ranger, you see, like I said, you see, you know, John Wayne and all these guys, and it was kind of cool. So I think, you know, every little boy and little girls that watch those shows really, you know, gravitated to that because of, you know, the glamorous ideas of the cowboy.
Mm-hmm. And you're right. And, you know, I've always had a theory that when you look at you go back to the cowboys, the working actual cowboys 150 years ago, you know, without the communication that we have today, they had a code of ethics they lived by. You didn't wrong anybody. If I said to you, I'm going to finish this cattle drive and I'm going to meet you in Cimarron in 6 months from today,
you'd be there.
Then you'd be there, and you had no reminders or telephone calls. You just had to remember that you were going to meet in 6 months. Right. So they had cowboy values that were very important. When the working cowboys kind of faded, the silver screen cowboys, as you mentioned, the Roy Rogers and the John Waynes and the Gene Autry's, and you run them all down, they kind of replaced that bill, and they still taught us that good always wins, you know, good defeats evil. Yeah. And Roy Rogers even had his 10 Roy Rogers Riders rules. If you may not remember that, but it was obey your parents, do your schoolwork, but it was all the things you should do to be a good, upstanding kid.
Right.
That message today, the silver screen cowboys are all gone.
Yeah.
So they are turning, the kids are turning to the superheroes because they're still imparting a message of good's going to beat evil and those kind of things, which kids need to see right winning out over wrong,
Right.
so that's what they strive for.
Right, because I don't think, most kids today, they're not playing outside anymore. They're inside with their phones and their computers and their video games. To us it was glamorous to be out, to see these guys out in the open range and the open pastures and running through, punching cows and, fighting Indians and all that stuff. That was a different world for us.
Yeah.
Like, hey, do
Right.
people really do that? Yeah,
Right.
that looks
Right.
cool, And today, you look at the superheroes, Iron Man and this guy and that guy. Everything's technology based. That's what these kids know. They don't know to go outside and, get on a horse. Not every kid,
Right.
of course. Kids maybe
Right.
towards the Midwest, they're still doing that stuff. They're rodeoing every weekend. But in the cities, we don't see any of that.
Well, see, the other thing about that, and like even when I was a kid, I had a horse, but I also watched, I'm talking now, I'm giving my age away here, but I would watch the old Superman TV show back in
Yeah.
the 50s. Everybody in my era would take a towel out of your mom's bathroom, tie it around your neck, put a safety pin in it, and then jump off of something thinking you could fly.
Jump off one of the dresses.
And that's when you learned that it didn't always work.
Right.
But you take then these kids that, like in my generation where we didn't have, that stuff.
Right.
You went outside and played. To go outside with a horse, now you've really got a winning package, because the horse not only is your companion, it takes the place of that quote secret friend that you
Right.
invented, and it also had with it all the responsibilities of caring for an animal.
Right.
So you got all of those lessons with that companion.
And that taught you values.
That's your values.
Yes, sir. So yeah, I mean, here on Long Island, when I, as a clinician, I do the expos and stuff, right? You go outside of New York, and people feel when you say to them, "Hey, I'm from New York," right away they assume you're from upstate, at best. At best.
At
you know,
best, yeah.
At best. But then you say you're from Long Island, and they cannot believe that there's horsemen on Long Island. They can't believe there's horsewomen, there's horsemen, there's horses. We actually have 30,000 horses here. And a fun fact is that we have Deep Hollow Ranch out here. It's at the tip of Long Island. It is actually the oldest working cattle ranch in the United States. So, there is a history of working cowboys here. There is a history of, we had a very big reining community at one time here. A lot of big reining shows were here.
There's still a cowboy mounted shooting group here.
There is a cowboy mounted shooting. A friend of mine, Joe Mugnai, started that. I never thought he'd get it done. He was a student of mine at one time, and he was a friend of mine. And he said, "Yeah, I'm going to do this cowboy mounted shooting." And handguns in New York is very difficult. Very difficult. But he got it done. And for me, anything that you can bring to the horse industry, in our area at least, is a plus.
Well, the first thing we want to do with this show, we're going to show you more things around Long Island here, but we want to show you the legitimacy of the horse industry on Long Island, because just like you said, Sonny, people say you're from Long Island, you're from not upstate New
Yeah.
York, you're from the area which everybody then considers it just New York City.
Right.
If you look at a map, Long Island is about 100 miles long. Okay, we are sitting about 50 miles out, so we're 50 miles east of New York City. Just starting to turn more to a little rural countryside than city. And if you go that last 50 miles east, it gets more and more rural. You're sitting here at this facility, which we're going to show you some pictures of, with about 4,000 acre preserve attached,
Correct.
with horse trails in it,
Absolutely.
and you're on Long Island.
And we have the funny thing is, because we're land shy here, we have 1,500 horses in a 3-mile area here. So there's a lot of horse just in this area here.
Yeah.
And people take advantage of the park. We do trail ride out there. I have a facility where I bring horses in and stuff and work with them. But there are a lot of riders here. There's a lot of horses here.
There's a lot of really good horsemen and horsemanship, and yes, it's Long Island, but don't be fooled. Don't be duped, okay? It's really good.
No, we
So-
do all right. We do all right.
So you do a lot of training and everything. So what's on the agenda? What are you up to these days?
Well, I do in-house training, of course, but I travel. I do clinics. I'll travel up and down the East Coast. I'm actually going to Germany this year, outside of Berlin. I've been contracted to go there and do a clinic in June. So I'll be in Germany this year. But yeah, I do clinics. I've done every major expo just about. I've done Equine Fair. I've done Horse World. I do Horse World every year. I'm there.
Baltimore and Harrisburg, right?
Baltimore and Harrisburg.
I see you there every year.
Yeah. I mean, I've been up to BC at the main event. I represented the U.S. at a colt starter competition. So, that's the funny thing when people say, well, you're from Long Island. Yes, that's true. And quite frankly, a lot of what we do, a lot of what I've done has been really just out of being self-taught. Working with horses for 20 years, understanding the horse, because there's no way, a good horseman has to develop feel and timing and all that stuff. You can't be taught that. So you can watch a million videos and you can watch, a million YouTube videos, but unless you're getting out there and doing that stuff, you'll never develop it. So yeah, there is a sense, it's harder for us here because we don't have a lot of land. It is harder for us here because we weren't brought up on it. A lot of kids in the Midwest are they're rodeoing every weekend. The high schools have rodeo teams, and you get your 4-H and stuff like that. We don't have that anymore here. We don't have it. I think maybe we have one 4-H out here. I'm not sure, but our kids here aren't brought up with that. We're really on the island here. It's English based. If you had to say, what's the breakdown? I would say it's like 50% English riding, and the other 50, maybe the other 30% or 40% is trail riders. And then you have, some Western guys, but, I don't consider myself a Western guy. Even though I'm sitting here in a cowboy hat, I'm a horseman.
Right.
Someone said to me one time, Sonny, do you train Western or English? And I said, well, I've never trained a saddle in my life, I train horses.
Right. That's a good line.
So, yeah. So, I mean, I don't care what saddle you ride in. I do problem horses and colt starting and stuff like that, and teaching clinics. But we are at a slight disadvantage, of course, because we don't have things going on all the time. But the reason I'm glad you're here is to show people, hey, we do things here. We have produced some really good cowboys out of here.
Yeah, we were here. We came in yesterday, actually, day before we're filming this. You had a vet here doing ultrasound on a horse. And all of the things you'd find in any other barn. And as you kind of watch through this video, you'll see shots of the barn, the paddocks, the arenas. And remember, it's all on Long Island. It's what, do not look down your nose and make you have to say, I'm sorry, I'm from New York. Don't be. It is, because there's a lot of great horses and horsemanship.
Yeah.
And you tapped on training English, Western, whatever. If you take a reining horse and a dressage horse and you put them in the arena, 90% of the training is the same for both.
Correct.
The saddle is different, but 90% of the training is the same. The only difference really in some of that, well, some of the finer dressage moves are a little more advanced, and then the way you cue the horse is a little different. But the training, if a horse is a good reining horse, chances are it could be a good dressage horse.
Listen, fly and lead change is a fly and lead change.
That's
A piaffe is a piaffe, whether
Right.
you're in Western saddle or English saddle. So I totally agree with you there, and I'm happy that you're here to show that. And, I'd be more than happy to show you around. And,
We're going to do that. We're going to take a look around. Sonny, thank you.
Hey, Wayne, good seeing you, and thanks for having us.
And you're welcome. And to all of you, just keep watching. We're going to show you more around here, around a working horse farm. I didn't use the term ranch, but working horse farm with all the bells and whistles, including 4,000 acres of trail right behind us.
Yes, sir.
Right here in central Long Island. Stay with us here on Speaking of Horses. Thanks, Sonny.
The rural American lifestyle. It's how we work, and it's how we play. It's how we learn and how we enjoy the finer things in life. How we take care of our animals and tend to the land. It's a way of life. Has been for hundreds of years. Now there's a whole new way for rural America to watch TV.
Hey, Wayne Williams, speaking of horses, and we're still here in beautiful Manhattan. We are just a few blocks south of Macy's. If we hang another week, we can watch the Thanksgiving Day Parade. But we're in the Helen Mills Theater again. It's the Equus Film Festival 2017. Now, my guest right now is Jacqueline Osborne, and you are the director of Suffolk County for the New York State Horse Council. And that's Allen. We're figuring out it's at least the eastern half, maybe a little more, of Long Island. Now, first of all, we want to say welcome, but second of all, there's a lot of horses on Long Island, and you don't think about that. So give us a little insight into the horse industry on Long Island.
Okay, no problem. Long Island is basically about 120 miles from Manhattan, so it's this long island attached to New York City. And so when people say you're going to New York City, they're like, oh, okay, so it's skyscrapers. Oh no, you leave town, and the further east you get towards the end, which is what we actually call it, where Montauk is, it's the end of Long Island, you start going into more and more agricultural land, farms, barns, stables, and as you pass through the Hamptons that most people are familiar with, which is in the Suffolk County area on the eastern end of Long Island, you pass these, beautiful multi-million-dollar compounds with the gorgeous thoroughbreds running around in the fields, and mostly hunter-jumper English riding. It's top-notch, high-end horses. The Hampton Classic is there with over 1,200 entrants. Horses entered every year at least, international competition, and but that's sort of, we have this phrase that we say out there. It's called horses. I say horses behind the hedges. You usually say houses behind the hedges because the mansions are also big and beautiful, and then there's giant hedges hide them, so when you drive by you can't really see. But there are horses behind the hedges also. I mean, people that are driving around see the beautiful horses and they think, oh, isn't that pretty? They don't realize that there is a livelihood had by many in the horse industry, and the equine community is quite large in Long Island, and we estimate that there's somewhere between, sounds like a very large stretch for an estimation, but between 30 and 60,000 horses on Long Island alone. That's on the high end if we're including the racehorses from the Belmont track. And anyway, we have a lot of organizations: East End Livestock Horsemen's Association, Nassau Suffolk Horsemen's Association, Islip Horsemen's Association, Muttontown Horsemen's Association, Long Island Professional Horsemen's Association, Long Island Dressage Association, all kinds of horse people. Many of them have in their backyard, they have 1 or 2 horses. They don't have them in fancy barns. They trailer them to parks and trailways for riding, for pleasure. And what we're trying to do right now in Long Island is the New York State Horse Council has been very effective, and most recently had some legislation passed working with the Farm Bureau to get the inherent risk law passed in New York State, which is one of the last holdout states. There's only California and, gosh, I don't remember what the last one is, that doesn't have inherent risk,
Right.
which protects the barn and landowners.
Yeah, they cap off the liability if, there is inherent risk if you're working with a horse, and, if the horse spooks and injures you, it's not necessarily the fault of that owner.
That's right.
And in most all states have capped that off.
Yes.
Because of the livestock unpredictability of the horse.
Right. And
Right.
so the law, we're also happy that it passed because it's in favor of the people who allow you to come in and have a one-on-one experience with the horses and be on a farm and everything else. But just remember, there might be barbed wire. A horse might nibble you if he thinks your finger's a carrot. Just like when you go to a ball game, you might get hit by a ball. Are you not going to go to the ball game? No, you'll say,
Right.
it's my choice. So anyway, that's something that the New York State Horse Council has done, but what we were going to do now, we're very excited about it. Long Island and New York City have only been a region, the southeastern region for New York State, and we have 8 regions. We have Southeast region as us, we have Mid-Hudson, Capital, Northern, Central, the Southern Tier, the Finger Lakes, and the western part of New York. But now we're going to turn our region into a chapter and to speak to all those other organizations that I mentioned, so that we all have a voice in legislation to keep trails open, to keep land available to horse people, to not have ridiculous numbers of acres required to have one horse, you know, because we don't have a lot of land, but we have a lot of horses, and we have a lot of people who love their horses.
See, and that's a key you just mentioned, because on Long Island, and the time I spent around Islip, you know, in this film that you're looking at, the interesting thing is I had no idea that you could have like 2 or 3 acres and actually have a barn and a facility with several horses on it on Long Island or in New York City, because I figured the restrictions on that were so great that wasn't possible. But it is.
It is.
It is.
It is.
You know, it reminds me a little bit of Norco, California. If you've
I
been
know
there.
Norco.
Okay, where it's, you know, not sidewalks but horse trails.
Right.
And you put your horse in your backyard, we don't care. But I didn't expect to see that kind of setup out on Long Island, and I did. So I commend, you know, that the horse lovers are getting that done. You got to protect that. You're
Right, we have to protect it because, you know, just as anywhere in this country, urban sprawl, the housing developments, they're all just sort of eking into our world. And, you know, it's easy enough for a farmer who, just to sustain that lifestyle, being a farmer, it's a lot of work, and it's easier to sell the property off for several $1 million and let it just become developed. And now all of a sudden we don't have another place to go ride, another place not to have farms. So we're very protective of all of our
And it takes me to a comment I heard Paul Harvey make years ago on the radio. You know, if we keep expanding like this, you better get ready to eat concrete, because that's all that's going to be out there.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The nice thing about Long Island is it's really a different animal when it comes to you know, how we are. We're protective of our land, our water. We're surrounded by water, the Long Island Sound and the Atlantic.
Right.
And we still have farm stands that take that you can put your money in on a what do you call it, honor system, you know?
Right, yeah.
Get a bag of tomatoes for $5, put your $5
You're
in
right.
the box.
You know, I actually saw one of those the other day, and it's kind of amazing because, you know, in rural Wisconsin where I live now, that's an everyday occurrence. You don't expect to see it
in New
here.
York,
Right.
right. And the other thing is we also have a lot of Western riders. We have, I mean, English is the big discipline at the Hampton Classic, you know, the hunter jumpers, equitation. But people with the backyard guards that go trail riding, ride on the beach. I just took my horse out onto a beach 2 weeks ago. It was just wonderful.
Yeah.
I mean,
You also have a cowboy-mounted shooting organization out on Long Island.
yes,
So there's, you know, there's team ropers out there.
right.
There's all kinds of different things you just don't expect.
But you don't expect it.
King Barns, located in New Holland, Pennsylvania. If you want a great custom-built barn, you got to contact kingbarns.com. All kinds of customized barns, top-grade materials, and wonderful custom design to meet your request. Please check out King Barns today. Source Nutrition. One of the fine sponsors, Source Nutrition, micronutrients developed from the seaweed harvested off the coast of Maine, aids in digestion, helps with older horses, keeps everything moving fine in your horse's digestive tract. Check out Source. Speaking of horses, Freddie Carmen is my guest. We're still here on Long Island, having a great time. Sonny Garguilo has been showing us around and working around this facility. But Freddie has quite a history with horses here as well. And so we want to say welcome to Speaking of Horses, and just give us a brief history, Freddie, of you've been on Long Island a long time, your family's been here a long time. Just kind of give us a brief history of your history here and horses here on Long Island.
Well, we settled here in 1639, and we've had horses throughout the family, all of us. And my recognition first with the horses was with standardbreds. My father was into standardbred trotters and paces, and then when Roosevelt closed up and stuff like that, and I got drafted and got out of the horse a little bit, and when I came back, I started back and I started rodeo. And I tried about everything but ride a bull. And, but I got caught up roping. I did a little bit of calf roping, and then I got hooked on team roping. And I team roped for, I guess, a good 15 years. And we went all over. Montauk had rodeos, and we had rodeos right here on the island. We put our rodeos on right here in Oakdale and Bohemia, and we're on a park right now that's got 4,700 acres. Probably, I would say 500 horses got to be on this area here, maybe more. But Long Island's was a big horse place. At one time, we had it just as much as Texas.
And you know, when you say a big horse place, it wasn't just dressage or just jumping, but like you say, you did the team roping, you did all of those kind of activities, and people don't think about that being a factor on Long Island, but it is.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
Hang on a minute.
I wanted to get that off you.
That's all right. You got it? Okay. But you know, people don't think about those things all happening on Long Island with all of that stuff, and you just think people have this ingrained thought process when you say New York, they just think of New York City. You know, first of all, there's tons of upstate New York that's gorgeous, but you come out here, we're 50 miles or so east of the city, about halfway out on Long Island. It's gorgeous, and there's great horses and horse people out here. And we want people to understand that, you know, if you love horses, it doesn't matter where you're from. You don't have to be from Texas to love horses, you know. So, you know.
And the sad part of it is we have them, like right now in my backyard, it's 3/4 of an acre, and I have two horses and a small horse, but they get along, and we have to buy our own hay. We used to be able to grow it right here on Long Island, and it's a little bit of a chore getting rid of the manure and stuff like that, but it gets done because people still love the horse.
Well, you know, and if the only thing you got to worry about is taking care of the manure and certain things so you can have your horses here. Every horse person has to muck stalls, take care of manure. I don't care where you're at in the country, that's a part of life. And actually, my wife, for example, her recreational forms are mucking stalls. I mean, she says, if I don't get out and muck a few stalls, I don't feel like I'm alive, you know. But that just goes with the territory, and it goes with your commitment to taking care of your horse.
Yeah, absolutely. And I have friends of mine that still got them, and it was a horseshoer, retired. He's got 4 or 5 in the backyard. We roped in his yard, and he started calf roping with Jim LeBou and everybody, and it was a big thing on Long Island.
And it still is.
Yes, it is.
It still is, and we're sitting here today as proof of that because we've been showing people around this facility and talking about what all's going on with horses on Long Island, and it's great. What I love is this facility here that Sonny works out of. You go right out of these paddocks out here behind us, and there's, what'd you say,
4,700 acres.
4,700 acres of a preserve with horse trails. Just go out there and ride and have a good time.
Yeah.
And there's no better people on this earth than
Oh,
people that take care of their horses.
Oh, they're all good people. And I got to add a little something. First cattle ranch in the United States was on Montauk in Montauk, Long Island.
Yeah, and that's the very eastern
East,
tip.
that's the tip of the end.
Tip of the
That's
end, yeah.
When you go there, that's the end.
Because I think the very end out there is Montauk Point.
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
Yeah.
That was the first cattle ranch. And
Yep.
you said Teddy Roosevelt actually,
Convalescent there.
after San
San
Juan
Juan,
Hill and
yeah.
the Spanish-American
Yeah.
War, he was
Yeah.
out there recuperating.
Yep.
Right. So, Freddie, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us.